Hey, my name's ShawNshawN. I sell art on ShawNshawN.co and screen reading on ShawNshawNacting.com. Today we're going to review Zola. So this is a film by Janicza. Bravo. I think it's a Polish name. Time is 1 hour and 26 minutes, so right in that sweet spot I really love of 1 hour and a half. Actors are Paige as Zola, this girl who's kind of swept away. She's a waitress, dancer, and then she's swept away on this mysterious dancing trip. Keough is Stefani. She's the girl that's a dancer that convinces this girl to go on this crazy dancing trip down in Florida. Ariel Sachel is Sean, one of the boyfriends. Braun is Derreck, the boyfriend, one of the good acting there. He plays kind of the simp boyfriend of Stefani. Nasim Rahim plays Jonathan, one of the sidekicks, and Colman Domingo plays X, the pimp of Stefani. So the story is, Zola is this black waitress working at this diner, and she does dancing on the side, and she has a boyfriend, and this mysterious couple shows up. Stefani, this blonde girl, and she's like, "Hey girl, you want to go dancing?" And she's like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" She's like, "Oh, you're a dancer, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I dance." And she's like, "Hey, you want to go down to Florida? We can make thousands. We can make $5,000 a weekend." She's like, "What are you talking about, right? That sounds crazy." Because she's used to making a couple hundred a night. So she's like, "All right, bet, let's go." So it shows up with these two guys, right, in a Mercedes-Benz Jeep kind of thing. So really cool. And there's this black guy driving. She doesn't know his name for like 30, 40 minutes. This guy just talking, never introduced himself, right? So it's kind of a funny start. And they get going, they start filming themselves, do a couple of prep photos, they do some dancing, and then she's like, "Hey, I gotta get this other gig, you wanna go along?" She's like, "All right, go on to the next gig," and the next gig doesn't turn out to be dancing, it's actually hooking, and she's like, "What the fuck is this?" So it goes from dancing all the way to hooking, which is definitely what happens in stripping. There's always, the side dance, like the private dance, and obviously hooking illegally, right? So it's just a very close boundary between those two. And I like the fact that this crosses the boundary it shows kind of the full spectrum of what stripping can be and pole dancing. So it's definitely much more grittier than, say, there was a film a while, I think last year, with J-Lo in it about stripping and making a lot of money. But I feel this film is way more realistic. It's grittier, and it definitely has a better storyline, I think, than J-Lo's story. J-Lo had a lot of money thrown at hers, and obviously it's J-Lo, so people went and saw it, and I think it was a good story as well. But this is just way grittier, more realistic, I'd say. So story-wise, I think it's a stronger story. They have this weird kind of thing. They're using like a grainy film look. I don't know if they shot it on film or they made it look like film, like by adding kind of grain texture on top of it. I find it kind of annoying. I think if the film had been in the 70s, like shot as if 70s, that makes sense. But if you're shooting in the 2000s, why are you using a bad camera? I mean, this camera right here, I could shoot better the whole damn film. I'm just an amateur videography, but I could shoot the damn film better. I was like, man, if I had an actor and crew and that, I could easily shoot this film. Just like, there's so many shots where I'm like, why did they shoot it this way? It could have been shot a little bit better, a little bit different lens, a little bit better lighting. But it has that realistic look to it, so that's kind of cool. I mean, it's nice that they stylized the film like that, because it's very interesting that, you don't normally see a whole film shot grainy film look. Nowadays, you might do a flashback sequence or something, but you wouldn't do the whole thing shot with worse quality camera equipment than you can actually get in the market. Like, this camera would shoot better the whole film, so it's just kind of an odd thing that you'd have. Like, this camera is literally like, I don't know, the lenses and everything, maybe $1,500 worth of camera equipment, you shot this film better. So kind of an oddball thing. They did have this really cool film sequence where they shot inside the car, and it's kind of like they're shooting with their iPhone or something. They probably use like a camera like this with a wide lens, but still, it's like it has that feel, and they're passing around the camera and everything, and they're just doing these crazy kind of on the run shots, and you're like, where is this movie going? It's just like this really crazy off the wall, real natural feel to the film. It has almost a Pulp Fiction kind of feel, where you're just like, where's this film going kind of thing. So it has a lot of potential, and that kind of like weird elements kind of added to the film, where you're like, what the hell is this film about, right? And I think if they had added just a few more sequences that were just a little bit odd and off, and then cut down a little bit on the editing on some of the driving sequences that were just really long, and I think they're too long, but if they kind of added some weird sequences in there, a little bit more like watching TV or whatever, it would have had that really kind of Pulp Fiction kind of weirdness to it. Yeah, and just a lot of the driving sequences are just so long, and you're like, why is this so long? It just the edit just seems off to me, and the transition's bad. I think like sometimes they'll be driving and then all of a sudden boom, they're popped in the driveway and you're like, just have a little bit of transition there. Cut that long driving sequences off by 10 seconds, add another 5 seconds of the car comes around the bend, pulls in, and just that little bit of transitional film I think would have made this film a lot better as far as the driving sequences. Sometimes it just feels a little bit unnatural in the edits. They probably just didn't shoot enough shots to have those kind of in-between shots from the establishing shot to closer range and closer and closer and closer. And you kind of want that full range. And then maybe you don't use all those shots, but you want that to kind of pick and choose what you need. I myself don't always have great combination of sequences to put the story in, but that really helps on a story building sequence. And I felt some of these shots were just a little bit off, like the driving scenes were long and then the transition scenes weren't as good as they could have been. The thing I liked about this film is there was a film last year, I think, with J-Lo about dancing, and with J-Lo it's just like she's a beginning dancer and she just rises up to the top and then takes over this top girl spot or whatever, dancing. And it's just all about dancing, and J-Lo doesn't even get naked on the thing, so you're just like, this is totally unrealistic. I mean, J-Lo probably just didn't want to do nudity, which I understand, but you're a pole dancer, you're a freaking pole dancer, right, dude? It's just not realistic. And this show is really, it gets the nitty gritty, right? The real pole dancing, there's real almost nudity, and then there's obviously hooking. So you have all those sequences put together, and it has some of the real nitty gritty of like these ugly, it shows the really nasty sides of prostituting. Like she has to fuck these old guys, and she's like in her 20s fucking these super old guys, and it's like, blah. And then this pimp takes all her money after she fucking these old guys all night. You're like, oh dude, what the fuck is wrong with this girl? And the black girl is like, what the fuck? And it's so awesome because her character kind of reflects the audience, like, why am I here, you know? So that's so awesome. I think it's really well put together. It has this thing where they cut a couple different sequences into the film, and they use kind of the beginning sequence of this 70s kind of glamorized, I think it's the same script as the nightclub from Andy Warhol, so they use that lettering and they use this in the film as kind of the sequences between. But those sequences are literally like 10-20 seconds. Like, why do you have them as whole scene cuts? It would have made sense, I think, if you cut that film like maybe down an hour with, you know, some of those long driving sequences cut down shorter and squash that down, and then you could have added those, you could have beefed up those side sequences of explaining the different viewpoints. That would have been super interesting cut of the film. You'd have to film probably 2-3 times the amount of film they actually filmed and just shoot all those sequences from 2 different perspectives and really change the viewpoint. It would have been freaking awesome, I think, just to have the split between Zola and Stefani. So it's Zola and Stefani, and they have a little bit of viewpoint of Stefani, but it's really the whole viewpoint of Zola, right? But it would have been awesome to kind of split that more between Zola, Stefani, even the pimp's view would have been freaking awesome if they had showed his viewpoint. Like, yeah, I con these fucking hoes, what do you think? Like, that would have been freaking awesome, you know, just to have those 3 viewpoints and just kind of split the film a little bit differently. That would have been awesome. They would have made up more stuff, right? I think it's based off some text that went back and forth between the 2 dancers. So they kind of based the film off real text, supposedly, but I think if they would really add the backstory a little bit of X, why he's in it, his scam. They do explain at the very end of the film kind of the twist on the story, so you get a little bit better feel there. And so then you're like, oh my god, this guy's really bad, right? Because he has this huge house and everything. But yeah, it's pretty good. There's this really haphazard flow to the story. You don't know where it's going. There's just this weird sequences. So I think that's really kind of capturing kind of a Pulp Fiction feel to the film, which is really great, but they could have developed out just a little bit more, again, just adding some weird TV scenes, and they added some stuff in there that were just so weird, and you're like, well, what is this going to go with the story? And it doesn't really have much to do with the story. But if it had been more symbolic, like they used, I think, like the Confederate, one of the Confederate kind of style flags of Florida or Georgia or something, you know, if that had somehow twisted into the story with someone wearing it, that was one of the, you know, like there was some weird Confederate guy that was screwing the girl or something, I don't know. But if he had had that tattoo, that would have kind of, you would have shown that multiple times, that would have stitched together that sequence, but you just have this flag sequence, you're like, what is this about? Nothing. There's a lot of weird sequences, you're just like, okay, why was this in the film? Why was this not edited out? But it kind of adds to the film at the same time, so I'm not really sure on the editing, if you'd leave those scenes in or take them out, or just make more weird sequences to kind of make the film kind of flow a little bit more just wild. Acting by the actors is phenomenal. Even though the film quality isn't what I liked per se, but the acting is just great. Like the story is pretty solid, and just the great acting, especially the simp boyfriend. Like, mwah. He just plays his boyfriend, going along trying to convince his girlfriend to stop being a hooker. What a fucking wuss. Like, why would you screw some girl that's a hooker in the first place? He's like, oh, I'm gonna save her, and then he tries to commit suicide, and you're like, oh my god. It's like such a great character. I love that guy. And then he kind of screws up the whole freaking design of what they're doing and gets the girls in trouble, and you know, almost gets them captured. So it's this really great character. But also the pimp was a great actor. He has that really, you know, Mr. X. The two different dancers are really great. That's freaking hilarious. I didn't see any weak acting anywhere through the whole plot. I think they chose really good actors for this. It's just, again, the cinematography is not what I would like. Also, they had this really bizarre soundtrack. I think maybe they had one or two great music tracks, but the rest is kind of this really generic soundtrack. They made it up themselves. Just ran on a budget and they're like, oh, we'll just make up our own soundtrack. You're like, no, dude. Like, they have these great driving sequences, and if they'd added like killer freaking music on top of all the driving sequences, I think it would have made the film spectacular, right? And maybe it would have cost them a couple $100,000 more, but it would have been definitely a must-have to this film. It would have made it, you know, way better, I think. So it's just kind of a weird thing. I would just say this is the first film I've seen that has some really great story elements, great acting, but at the same time, really shitty fucking music and kind of crappy cinematography. Not terrible, but just bad. Or not bad, just not perfect, I'd say. Like, I think I could shoot it better with this camera, per se, and then just stylize it on editing side. It's fine if you stylize it, but just have better quality, I think. So it's between, you know, like great acting, great storyline, and then you have this crappy cinematography, crappy music. You're like, is it a crappy film? Is it a good film? It's almost like kind of like a Pulp Fiction feel, and then it's like kind of all the crappy elements. You're like, what are they doing in this film? I didn't quite understand that as far as using the grain film. It looks like pre-70s, but it's shot in the middle 2000s, so why? If it's in the 2000s, why would you have crappy cinematography? I don't really understand that. I mean, it does kind of give kind of a whitewash to the sense that it doesn't glamorize the pole dancing and hooking, right? So that's kind of the good side. I don't know, it's an interesting film. Definitely fun to watch. I would rate it good. You probably see it a couple times because it's just so crazy at the storyline, but then it's like the editing is just a little bit off as well. You're like, why are these sequences so long, you know, and why did they add a little bit, few more scenes to make it even cooler? But yeah, just some are bizarre things. Overall, you know, I liked it. If you guys want to subscribe, you can subscribe below, and I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.